What's going on, guys? B. Scott here with you on today's show. We got your waiver wire heading in to week number 14. Week number 13 is almost over. We got the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. Going to battle it out tonight, but we're going to get ready to be looking ahead. We're getting closer and closer to the fantasy playoffs. We got only a week or 2 weeks away, so we're going to get into the waiver wire. So keep it locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going through the waiver wire heading into week number 14 a little bit early. I always do this on Monday before the Monday Night Football game, but we got to talk about the waivers because there's some players that could help bolster, and if you need stream options, there are some teams on bye next week. So I got to get to some quarterbacks, running backs. I'll get to every position and touch on a few players. But before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff, and then comment. If there's a player I didn't mention, because I'm not going to mention every single player. I have about 8 to 10 players here. Drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to give you my advice, whether you should pick them up, roster them, start, sit them over somebody else, anything like that. So let's start with the waiver wire. I always start at the top with the quarterback position. So there's a couple quarterbacks I like this week to pick up. One is Taysom Hill. Now, yes, he's dealing with an injury. He's got the mallet finger. They're saying that he more than likely might play through it. And just for this matchup alone, the New York Jets, who are terrible against running backs as it is and just rushing in general, you've seen what every single team has done on them, and especially the running back position. Taysom Hill, just running the football, had 100 yards on Thursday, did have 4 interceptions, but still finished with 2 passing touchdowns. And Taysom Hill is a good option this week, owning 34% of leagues. Like I mentioned, playing the Jets. So if you got to be rostering a quarterback and looking for a stream type option, I think you could see Taysom Hill here with 60, 80, 100 rushing yards once again, maybe a score on the ground, maybe a couple scores through the air. So he's got a pretty safe floor, especially with his rushing upside, if he's available to go. Now, yes, he's dealing with the mallet finger, like I mentioned, the similar injury to Russell Wilson, but they're saying he's going to give it a try and go. And if he's out there just in this matchup, I'm firing Taysom Hill as a decent low-end QB1 this week. Another quarterback, I mentioned a guy that you could potentially pick up and stream in a deeper leagues, Cam Newton. Now, yes, he's coming off one of the worst NFL games of his career, 5 for 21, I want to say, 2 interceptions, just looked terrible. And the Miami Dolphins defense has played very good, especially at home. But this week, Cam Newton's at home against the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, second most fantasy points to the quarterback position. They've allowed 25 passing touchdowns to the quarterbacks. That's second most in the league. And Cam Newton has the rushing upside. So we know this. I like him as a good stream option, albeit it's on the lower end. You've seen what he did against the Washington football team. That defense that wasn't playing very well, finished with 3 touchdowns in that game. I could see Cam Newton with 2 or 3 touchdowns here. The Atlanta Falcons, you just seen it, got roasted by Tom Brady. They've been beat up on a lot of times this year. The only quarterbacks they've actually had success against are the worst teams in the league and rookies. Trevor Lawrence, they played Zach Wilson, just those quarterbacks. Those are the ones that have struggled against this Atlanta secondary, but the actual elite ones have just dominated it. And I'm not saying Cam's elite, but I think he has something left in the tank. I still do. A nice bye week to get a little refresher here. He's a good option this week. So let's talk about some running backs. I got a few guys to mention to pick up really going forward. And first, I'm going to start with Dontrell Hilliard. Now, he was on bye last week. 12 carries, 131 yards and a touchdown against New England Patriots 2 weeks ago. He's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville defense has been really bad on the road. This is a divisional matchup, but the Tennessee Titans are going to be running the football in this one. Julio Jones potentially coming back in this one as well, so we'll have to wait and see. But I like Dontrell Hilliard as a good option in the 2 games he's played, 15-plus PPR points. So and his game script is irrelevant. If they're down, he's going to play because he's the receiving back, and if he's up. Now, yes, Deontay Foreman's another guy that I'm going to mention. Both these running backs, I think, have viable low-end RB2 flex worthiness this week based on the matchup. Deontay Foreman cleared 100 yards against the New England Patriots. Now, yes, he's not going to get a lot of the receiving work, but he could see some of the red zone work here, and I like the matchup here. So that's why I'm going to mention these 2 running backs as potential guys for this week, good stream options. We're only a couple weeks away from the playoffs, so this is must-win territory. We got to be picking the right guys. And then a couple stashes. For me, it's the Philadelphia Eagles running backs. Now, Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. Both these guys I would probably stash. Boston Scott, I had him as a start. I thought he would do well. Obviously, dealt with an illness later in the week and was an emergency option. And, of course, Kenneth Gainwell, the backup, which I thought Boston Scott would be the backup, had a great day here. And Miles Sanders, dealing with, it looked to me like a severe ankle injury. We'll have to wait and see. But dealing with an ankle injury nonetheless. Now, they are on bye next week, so that's why it's a stash here. But Gainwell, 12 carries, 54 yards and a touchdown. 5 catches for 33 yards. He's explosive when he's on the field. He just hasn't really got a lot of the chances. I'm not sure why. But Boston Scott and Gainwell and Jordan Howard, all three of these guys, a lot of them are stashes. They're in the run-heaviest offense in football, and 1 to 2 of these guys are going to be viable every single week. So that's why I mention them as stashes at the running back position. If you're set up nicely and you might need a decent start here in a couple weeks. Now on to some wide receivers, guys that I would be picking up. Just make sure they're on your roster heading into the playoffs. Russell Gage, first off, 7+ targets, 4 of his last 5 games. The Atlanta team as a whole stinks, especially the defense, so they throw the ball a ton. They're at the Carolina Panthers, at San Francisco 49ers, kind of tough matchups, but then they get Detroit, week 16. And Russell Gage, 12 targets just yesterday, 11 catches, 130 yards. And I thought he would average 7 to 8 targets per game this season. I had him as a sleeper coming in, and it really didn't come to fruition. That Atlanta offense really has struggled outside of Cordero Patterson. Even Kyle Pitts really hasn't done much. But Russell Gage is a nice option heading into the fantasy playoffs. A guy that should be on your roster, and you could potentially spot start him if you really have to. I think the San Francisco 49ers, not necessarily a terrible matchup, but not a great one. And the Carolina secondary plays good at times. It is a tough divisional game, so I'm not saying start Russell Gage this week, but just a guy, a good option that's seeing enough targets and enough volume, could have low-end flex appeal. Then we got KJ Osborne, wide receiver, Minnesota Vikings. Adam Thielen. Reports are he's potentially dealing with a high ankle sprain. More than likely, if it's high ankle, he's going to miss the rest of the season. I mean, there's only 4 weeks left, so I wouldn't see why they would rush Thielen back here if they're out of that playoff picture. I know they're close, they're right on the fence here, but losing to the Detroit Lions, that ain't going to help their playoff hopes one bit. 7 targets yesterday. That's the most since week 6. He's the best fit to fill the role of Adam Thielen. And guess what? Adam Thielen does. He catches a lot of touchdowns. You saw KJ Osborne yesterday. 4 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Now, yes, Justin Jefferson's going to see his no matter what. I want to say he had 16 targets, 18 targets, something insane yesterday. Absolutely dominated the game. But KJ Osborne is a good option because the Vikings defense isn't very good. They're not stopping anybody. And KJ Osborne has shown early on in the season some flashes here or there. So now with Thielen out, I think he's a good option. He's got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're secondary. They give up a lot of big plays. And then they're at the Chicago Bears, which their secondary, once again, also gives up plays. Those are good matchups. KJ Osborne, a good option heading down the stretch. And then my last guy is Julio Jones. He's on the 61% of leagues, so he's just outside, really, the waiver. But if he's available in your league, he's coming back off IR, and I get it. Julio's let down a lot of people this season. Coming into the season, we knew there was a lot of aspirations for him not to be injured. He's been dealing with severe hamstring injuries the last couple seasons. But he's returned to practice. He might give it a go this week. They play the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a great matchup. And no A.J. Brown. You could see Julio with 6 to 8 targets here, and Julio is still an elite wide receiver. So I would be picking him up and rostering him. Should be on your radar, especially making that playoff push. Then they're at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. So pretty decent matchup set up for the wide receiver. And like I said, with no A.J. Brown, who knows when he's going to be back. I think he's got to miss at least the next 1 or 2 games. So Julio Jones should be rostered in 90+% of leagues based on the production that he could have. I still believe in the Tennessee Titans overall. I think they're going to run the football effective, and they're playing Jacksonville. Just a good spot here set up. Hopefully Julio can stay on the field and stay healthy. And then I got one stash at the wide receiver position. It's going to be Devontae Parker, 52% owned. 5 targets yesterday. Caught all 5 of them for 62 yards. The other 5 games he's played, he's had 7 or more targets. So I think it's going to set up nicely down the stretch. He is on bye. But he's got the New York Jets, then at the New Orleans Saints, and at the Tennessee Titans. So the Miami Dolphins could be throwing the ball a little bit down the stretch. So I just think it's going to set up with Devontae Parker being a solid wide receiver 3 flex type option, down the stretch. Now I got one tight end that I really love to pick up. It's Tyler Conklin. Like I mentioned, with Adam Thielen injury, I think Conklin's numbers might uptick a little bit too. 9 targets yesterday, 7 catches, 56 yards. He's always in a red zone threat as well. And they got the Pittsburgh Steelers and that's the Chicago Bears. Like I mentioned, I think he could be a low-end tight end 1 the rest of the way. Now on to a few defensive streams I like for this week. Green Bay Packers facing the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears offense, albeit can be explosive at times. Green Bay's defense played very well on the season. And just Chicago Bears, I just can't trust that offense. I mean, yes, like I mentioned, they do play in spurts okay. David Montgomery did very well, but Green Bay's still been very good. So I would stream Green Bay defense. Tennessee facing the Jacksonville Jaguars, another good streamable option. Jacksonville on the road has just played really, really poorly, so Tennessee is a good option. Denver Broncos, their defense is good, but they and not just that, but they also are at home to the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions, don't get me wrong, Played very well, and they beat the Minnesota Vikings. Last-minute play, outstanding, into that game, especially for the Detroit Lions. Now they're on the road against a really tough Denver Broncos defense in a tough place to play. So I think Denver Broncos defense is really going to shut the Detroit Lions down. I'd be surprised if Detroit gets over 13 points in this next matchup. Then the Seattle Seahawks, their defense, they're at the Houston Texans. Houston doesn't even know what they're doing on offense at the moment. Davis Mills coming in, Tyrod Taylor benched. They're just playing poorly. And Seattle defense, 7 straight games allowing 23 or less points. They have a sack in every single game. And 10 of 12 games, they have at least 1 turnover. So I like Seattle as a good option this week. And then the Los Angeles Chargers facing the New York Giants. New York Giants down to the 3rd string quarterback. No offensive line. Saquon Barkley can't get any push. This is the best matchup you're going to get for Saquon Barkley against the Los Angeles Chargers team that hasn't been able to stop the run. But the Chargers defense played very well against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think it's just going to continue here. So I like the Los Angeles Chargers as a good stream option this week. So that's it. That's my waiver wire. Quick rundown of a few players. Nobody outstanding this week, but a few players that if you have to should be rostered for that playoff push. So if you have any questions or comments, drop it in the comment section. I'll be glad to give you my opinion, my advice on whether to pick guys up, start, sit, whatever you want, and we'll have the start, sits, and the matchups and all that for the rest of this week. And while you're there, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell for all your content, for all fantasy football, all the way to your championships. We're going to have some playoff shows and things like that as well. Some fun stuff to talk about. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.